Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and I'm here with a book haul. So I am finally back in the era of booktube where I can do book hauls. I had participated in the basically the Read What You Own challenge, which was to read a certain number of books that you already own before you go buying new books. And I did a pretty good job with that. I did cheat a little bit halfway through the challenge around the 25 book mark when Princeton University Press had a really good sale of 75% off. And I participated in that, and I kind of needed that. It was like a release pressure valve. I was actually getting a little bit bored with the challenge, and it just gave me a little bit a little bit of life back in the whole thing. And I had vowed that those books that I had gotten in that haul I would read within the year, and they all related to Historathon, which is a year-long booktube event that I began and that I have some great co-hosts along with me, where we are reading, discussing, celebrating nonfiction history throughout the year and splitting the year up into 4 quarters, each quarter looking at a different time period. We are currently in quarter 2, which is looking at the years 500 up to 1500. Now, the books that I have here for the haul, most of these are actually history books, except for a few nonfiction. And a lot of them I'm thinking about trying to do for Historathon either this year or next year. Some of these books were gifts. Some of them I bought myself. Now, like I said, I have finished. I don't know if I did say it. I finished the 50, the Read What You Own challenge. I think I'm getting ahead of myself. I had vowed to read 50 books, again, except for that little cheat with Princeton University Press. And also, I did have one other little cheat, which I allowed myself to pretty much buy like around a book a month if it was for Buddy Reads or BookTube events. So I allowed myself that as well. So, people can think about that what they want. I make up my own rules here, and that worked for me. So I did finish the challenge. I read my 50th book. Actually, it's been a few weeks now that I've read it. So that's one of the reasons why this pile has gotten kind of big. I made up for some lost time. And I began the challenge in, I think it was October of last year. So I was able to finish it in May. And I'm glad that I did it overall. I was able to free up some space in my shelves, get through some books I've been wanting to get to for a long time. I think I would do a version of that challenge again, but I don't think I would do 50 books. I think maybe 25 books. Once I get that 25 book mark, I start getting a little bit bored, and I think, one of the joys of being a bibliophile is also acquiring books. And I don't want to totally lose that aspect. So I think I will do this challenge again, probably end of next year or something like that. I think that's a good time to do it. But it'll only be a 25 book challenge. But I could see myself doing that periodically, maybe like once a year or something like that, essentially to free up like a shelf space. 25 books. I have this bookshelf behind me in my unfinished office. I am hoping to finish this room within the next 2 months. We need to be able to buy proper furniture for in here. So right now it's still very unfinished, but this bookshelf I have back here is like my TBR bookshelf, and it's around 25 books a shelf on there. So if I do the 25 book challenge, it basically frees up a shelf for that space. And I do still have some books in boxes behind me from my move last year in October. One of the reasons that made me want to do the book challenge in the first place. So I would do it again, but it'll probably be 25 books. So without further ado, we can start taking a look at the books that I got. Some of them are new, some of them are used, some of them were gifts, some of them I got. And let us begin. This one I actually got for my birthday. I had my birthday in April, and my family got me this one. So they saw this in basically my Amazon cart. This is Monsters in the Anglo-Saxon World, Basilisks and Beowulf by Tim Flight. I do really enjoy Anglo-Saxon history and also Norse history. I also like horror studies, monsters, ghosts, that kind of thing. My channel is called Revenant Reads because I am a lifelong horror fan. Although I should specify that it's more of a horror film fan. I don't read a lot of fiction to begin with, but I am trying to get more and more horror fiction in my reading, although it doesn't always happen because I gravitate mostly to nonfiction stuff. But this kind of fills both worlds. So this looked pretty good. I'm not gonna read all the information on these, but more show you what they are and tell you why I got them. But I'm really glad to have this. This will probably be something I look at for next year for Historathon. This next one, actually, this was from my son for my birthday. I really don't know much about it, but he knows I'm a big Batman fan, and he has also gotten into comic books lately, so I'm sure that he'll want to read it after me. But it's Batman Bruce Wayne Fugitive, so he picked this one out for me. So I'll try and read this one soon, and then let him borrow it. This one, actually, yeah, so here's another one. As I mentioned, I do like Norse history, and I've read some of this. I haven't read through all of them yet. This is the Poetic Edda, stories of the Norse gods and heroes. So these are quite old, and this is where a lot of our knowledge of Norse religious belief comes from, even though a lot of it was recorded after the fact through Christian eyes. But it probably dates back to a much earlier time. Again, I'm not speaking as an expert. This is just giving you the reason why I picked these things up. And this one is translated by Jackson Crawford, who is a Norse language specialist. And he also has a very prolific YouTube channel. So I got this to go through. I was hoping to get through this for this Historathon after picking this up. I don't know if I'll get the time for it, but I'm hoping I will. These are not really in any particular order, so I'm going to jump around a lot. This is one that I'm going to read for next year's Historathon. The first quarter of Historathon, we look at prehistory up to the year 500, and this is Philip Freeman's book about Hannibal Barca, Rome's greatest enemy. There you go. Fascinating historical figure. I never get tired of reading about Hannibal. I've already read a few books about him, but none of them have been fairly recent. I think the last book I read about Hannibal is at least over a decade old, and I'd read it over a decade ago. So it'll be nice to kind of catch up and get back into this world. So that one's for next year's Historathon. Got Doris Kearns Goodwin, No Ordinary Time, about FDR and Eleanor Roosevelt during the wartime years of World War II. Now, I had read a lot of this back as an undergraduate, but I don't know what happened to my copy, and I don't remember a lot. I don't know if I ended up finishing the entire thing or if I only read sections. So, about a month or so ago, I took my son on, we kind of did an overnight boys trip. We went to Hyde Park, and we went to the FDR home there, and he was learning about FDR. And this kind of made me want to pick this up again and reread it, go back into this time period. And I saw that there was a nice hardcover edition. So with the deckled edges and everything. So I don't know if I'm going to get to this year, but again, just glad to have it. This next one I picked up as a buddy read that I'm going to be doing with David Wiley next month in June. He and I both really like Anglo-Saxon history, and he is also starting to teach himself Old English. I have been teaching myself to read some Latin over the past year or so, ever since October of last year. But once I'm done going through my Latin stuff, I don't expect to become fluent in Latin. I just want to be able to read some of it. I do want to dive a little bit into Old English and also Old Norse. But this is a book that we both had an interest in. David, he's a great guy. You should definitely check out his channel. And he had approached me and said, "Hey, do you want to try and do a buddy read at some point?" He said, "You could pick the book." And I had I had my eye on this, and when I saw this, I automatically thought of David. I'm like, he'd probably really like this. So I was already thinking about getting it and then recommending it to him. And when I asked him, hey, you want to read this one together? He had just recently already picked up a copy. I think it was maybe an audiobook copy or something like that. But he had just the day before picked it up, so it was perfect. So next month in June, we are going to be reading this together. And it seems to have gotten pretty good reviews. So I look forward to this. But yeah, The Word Hoard, Daily Life in Old English. I don't know a great deal about it, but yeah, we'll see. Looks fun. Okay, these next two I actually found at a secondhand store at the Goodwill. I hadn't been in one of those since last year, since I started the book buying ban. That's one of the things that I would not do during the whole book buying challenge or the ban. I would not go into secondhand stores or go to book sales, because that's usually how I would get in trouble. I'd walk out with huge piles of books. But now that my 50 books is done, I went in there, but I restrained myself. There were other things I was looking at that I was almost getting, but I limited myself to 2 books. That's it. And this first one I had heard about, and I think I had been recommended to me a while back, but I had heard about it in other ways. But this is Surviving the Sword, Prisoners of the Japanese in the Far East, 1942-1945, by Brian MacArthur. A few years back, I had read Knights of Bushido and The Rape of Nanking, things that deal with Japanese war crimes, and I think at that time I had had people recommending this book to me as well, to check it out. So I saw it, for like maybe $2 or $1 at the secondhand store, hardcover. Still, the flat's a little bit beat up, but for the most part, it's still in pretty good condition. So this is a possible Q4 read for this year. I'm not sure. We'll see. And I'd also picked up this at Goodwill. Jeff Shara, Rise to Rebellion. One of the things I've been wanting to do, and I've had limited success. I have read some things, but I wanted to get into reading some more historical fiction. And I especially wanted to check out more Jeff Shara. I, of course, want to read his Civil War stuff. I think the reason I stayed away from him for a while is because the movie Gods and Generals, that's supposed to be based on his book, is such a terrible film. But then I had seen some interviews with him, basically him also talking about how it's a terrible film and it's really not a representation at all of his writing. So that made me more curious. So I saw this and I thought this is a book about, or his historical fiction about the American Revolution. I think it might be the first book in a series, possibly. Again, I don't know a lot about it because this book is over 20 years old, but again, I found pretty decent condition hardcover. So I figured I would end up giving this a shot at some point. Okay, I have 3 more books. So we're jumping around in time, but I had picked this one up, and this is Valkyrie, The Women of the Viking World by Johanna Catherine Fredriksdottir. I believe she is the spouse of Anders Winroth, who wrote The Age of the Vikings, which I read last month. And this is supposed to be a very, very good study of women in the Viking world. So I have seen a lot of praise for this one. So, definitely wanted to pick this up. I think this will be a definite read for next year for Q2 of Historathon. This is going on the must-read list. I also, related to my interest in the Norse, I also do have an interest in paganism, historical paganism, but I also am interested to see how people today have started adopting paganism and practicing it. I am a very secular individual by nature. I don't have much of a religious bone in my body whatsoever. My body kind of actively rejects that sort of thing most of the time. But I do have a fascination and a little bit of attraction to Norse paganism. And I don't mean just like the mythology, I mean like the actual way that it was practiced, minus the sacrifices and everything like that. But there's something about it that does speak to me. And I was interested in seeing how that sort of thing translates to some people not necessarily the strict Reconstructionists who want to go as close as possible to the way it was in Norse times. I am interested in that, but I also want to see how some people have incorporated things like Wicca and other kind of pagan or occult practices as well. So when I was in Salem last month with my kids, we went to a lot of witch shops, and there was one in particular that we went into that was much more heavily focused on the Norse side of things and Norse paganism. So this is one of the books that interested me. My family picked this one up for me when we were on vacation, just so I can check it out more. So this is a modern guide to heathenry by Galina Kraskova, and it is, I think it's supposed to be a pretty decent text. I know that I've seen some criticism of the author online, people claiming, one of the things that you can fall into with Norse paganism as it is today, you do have to watch out for things like folkism and some racist aspects. A lot of racists have adopted Norse occult symbols and runes, and I've seen people online throw that kind of accusation of this author in some ways. From what I haven't looked into it too deeply, but the things I have looked into, I don't know if it's always justified. Some of it looks like an overreaction, but anyhow, I didn't see anybody saying that the content in here was atrocious at all. So it is one that I will end up checking out, maybe more leisurely, maybe over the summer or something. I'm not sure exactly when I'm going to read this. I was thinking about doing this for maybe Midrash this year, but I just didn't have the time for it. So anyway, that was my interest in this. I'm approaching this in a more academic interest way, not as a potential practitioner necessarily. But I do find some of the stuff fascinating, and I have thought about ways to incorporate certain aspects of the calendar into my daily life in order to help me concentrate and focus and remember certain things that I want to remember more, like paying more attention to the seasons or remembering ancestors and discussing them with my children. I'm not very good at doing that stuff because I think I have such a secular mind. So anyhow, that's some of my motivation for that. That was a long discussion on that one. The last one here. This is nonfiction, The Invention of Murder, How the Victorians Reveled in Death and Detection and Created Modern Crime by Judith Flanders. Once again, kind of goes to my fascination with horror studies. I think this is related to that. But looking at, how Victorian fiction really grasped onto murder and mayhem and the gore and, all the dark aspects. Pretty big book, actually. It's over 400 pages, 500 pages. So, this is a possibility for the fourth quarter. I'm not entirely sure if I'll get to it, but it's definitely one that I'm considering for this year, for Historathon. And that's it. I know that is a big pile. It's a combination of new, used, and gifts. If you've read any of these, I would love to hear your thoughts. I'm going to try and hold it up as much as I can. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with this pile. As always, thank you, BookTube.